Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever time of day you're viewing this. I'm Big Bad Chad. I am today here for you with another game of Supreme Commander with a special guest. On the other line, I have Midge.
Hello, I'm the well-known turtler from some of our other games.
Indeed he is. And he's not in this game, so he gets to comment on it freely, as if he would have made all the right decisions and all of the best choices. So, yeah, I hope you're ready to give some pretty tactical commentary that will please our viewing fans.
Well, I shall certainly give it my best shot.
Good.
I mean, straight off of the bat, I can see here that we've got a nice new map. I say new map, one that I've never played before. But it looks like we've got some interesting starting positions there, Chad.
Indeed, it is a new map for all of us as well. Dave, Dinky Pie, and Alex Dyson, I've been given permission to use their names, so it's a little more obvious who I'm talking about. I will interchangeably, as I'm sure Midge will, call them Dyson as well, but we'll try to stick with game names or first names. Yeah, so it's new for all of us. It's pretty spicy starting positions. As you can see, we've got no rush turned off, so we can rush if we want. It's quite a large map. I believe it's a 20 by 20, so rushes are a little slow. But starting positions are all symmetrical, and we've got some nice defensive areas that might appeal to my turtle friend.
Yeah, the lay of the land there is really nice. You've got a nice high-rise starting point just at the very top of the cliffs with a good number of extraction points just there. In fact, 6 in total, so that's a lot more than you usually get on other maps. But then you've got this interesting walled-off zone, which then leads down to the lowland with ramps, which will be really interesting for making fortifications, either at the front there or at the top of the ramps to keep your opponent's rushes at bay.
Indeed. So maybe we'll see some of that fantastic siege play going on. What we might also see is some transport technique between the ridges here. It's a team game, I should say. I never explained that in this version. We have attempted to record this before, but there was an issue with recording, so we just talked about it for 2 hours. And it didn't record. Sorry about that, everyone. But it's going to be better this time. So yes, the teams are myself in red and Mike in green versus Dinky Pie in yellow and Dyson in grey. We just kind of pick teams for fun more than tactics or seeding. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say on that matter. We just sort of went at it. But we did split into 2 different calls on Discord, and Mike and I were immediately jumping into the very competitive deep end of the pool. So we were planning from the get-go.
Which I've got to say, having played against Dinky and Dyson before, as I'm sure they'll agree, they've probably jumped straight into the same mindset as well, probably trying to come up with some sort of tactic to push forward, knowing them and their Cybran ways.
Indeed. Hey, only one of them's Cybran.
Only one of them is Cybran this time. Before, they're quite avid fans of playing Cybran.
Indeed. That's fair. Yeah, so I'll put it back to normal speed now we've done the intro. Could have left it going, really. What we'll do is at about the 5-minute mark, we'll have a look at people's bases and see what they've got. But looking at the map, Midge, what kind of tactics might you be thinking? And if you say, well, I've got this really inventive plan where I turtle up and just build lots of tier 3 bots and a couple of fat boys, I'll never invite you to commentate again.
Right, okay, I better come up with something original then.
Yeah.
So, I would say, actually, looking at the map as well, we've particularly got some what looks to be NPC buildings and structures. So, from the get-go, I would say a really good shout would be to send out some units to not only scout those, but to claim them. One, it could be additional resources if our players choose to break them down and use them, but otherwise we've got some nice power generators there and radar coverage. So bearing in mind it's a 20 by 20 map, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to get some scouting set up around these points, perhaps obscured by some of the sort of mountain ranges with some of the NPC equipment on it if it doesn't already have a radar on it. That way it would be good to keep an eye on your opponents.
Now, neutral buildings, we have learned in our group that great opportunities for resources in these larger maps usually come with neutral buildings, and I know you can turn them off, but they're slightly less fun as maps that way. So we choose to play with them. And often these neutral buildings are turrets and defences, which makes taking them over a little less good. And we all assumed that would be the same in this. So you'll see for a while we steer clear of anything that might be a neutral base.
Which is a shame, but then it goes to show when you're playing competitively how important it is to know the map that you're on, and to get that scouting information out. Again, if not going for the radar positions among the NPC buildings, getting that air factory up and getting the scout out on your opponent is important. That information is key, and it will tell you exactly what your opponent's doing.
Indeed. On the note of what players are doing, we can see that I'm spreading out in a general manifest destiny manner with my workers to try and take those extra metal points, because the earlier you get them, the better they do for you. Whereas Mike has already started producing ground units. And you can see those aren't explosions there on the map. Those are us practicing with the pings that we've only just discovered how to work. So it would help us communicate accurately, so we got that out the way. I have been talking to Mike about doing a tag team offensive where he rushes in early, then I take over in the mid game with some more air power, and then he can finish off with his favourite unit of all time, the giant flying saucer.
A good old fan favourite, the Tsar.
Indeed.
Or Caesar, as he likes to pronounce it.
Yeah, Mike
but
either
way, we all know it commonly as the Independence Day ship.
Yeah. And Mike is very good at just gearing into them very quickly.
Yes, he's great at sorting his economy and keeping it balanced, and just getting himself elevated to that level, having a specific goal and shooting for it.
Yeah, and it's very impressive. And here, what he does instead, because we chatted about it in our channel while we were creating our first 4 metal extractors, and we agreed that changing our tactics somewhat would be better. So I've suggested Mike go for this early rush, and he does very well. I mean, it's 10 Tech 1 units, but it's better than nothing. Won't kill a commander, but it'll certainly threaten an early economy. Whereas I am not building anything offensive. I think I've got a second air factory up. Yes, that's about it. Slower to start there, and that's something I really need to work on.
And we can also see that Dinky's gone for his standard excellent anti-air defence, churning out those AA units, expecting some sort of air rush.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to the stage now where I can't do that anymore, so I don't think I will. But getting a few anti-air units up early is really vital, just in case, because tier 1 bombers are not expensive, so getting a few of them to harass bases without those defences is really quite a nice raiding tactic.
Indeed, and also having them there early on can help limit any scouting information that you might gather. Granted, if they're focused around your main hub, your main base where your commander's mostly operating, it is going to be somewhat of a giveaway as soon as that scout comes over. But when you get to the mid sort of period of the game, it certainly doesn't help when you started to get a few AA point defences up. As I can see that Dinky is certainly trying to get some AA shelling, sort of shell and shield up. We can see his first anti-air defence right at the front there, protecting that all-important mass extractor.
Indeed. So it's now almost 6 minutes in. Let's have a look at people's bases. We're talking about Dinky a lot, so this is the base. We've got a land factory and an air factory, very balanced. Air factory mainly defensive in this regard, I imagine, whereas the land factory sort of defensive as well, I guess, building those anti-air units.
It's that all-important one, though, isn't it? It's that nice, cheap, quick build to then immediately get that first engineer out and just start taking those mass points. Yeah. Then going on to air factory and possibly changing up the play.
Yeah, indeed. He's got his hydrocarbon plant, which is good. Not missed that. He's building these tier 1 air defences round to complete that web and just make it that little bit more fortified. Maybe overkill at this stage, but getting them in early will be good. I say maybe overkill. There are, of course, some of my bombers going to experiment with what's on the other side of this river. I say river. This was obviously it was a river, ecologically before things were...
The ravine.
Yeah, ravine. So I've got my bombers out, just a little scouting attack there. They're under attack already, so I think I just decide to try to kill this mass extractor, because it will be a nuisance. Do I do it? Probably not. No.
The amount of damage that comes out of bombers compared to the speed at which interceptors, intercept them, it's unlikely that any early rush with bombers, unless you have significant numbers, is really going to make any impact.
Indeed. But it was a little bit of scouting, so I know he's got objectives there for me to bomb later on. Over here, my base, well, I'm churning out more bombers. I've got a second and third air factory. Fair enough resource generation at the moment. Oh, we didn't have a look at resource balance. Think he's doing pretty well. What am I doing? I'm doing pretty well as well. That's impressive.
Yeah, reasonable numbers.
Yeah. Cycling around to Mike. Pretty good too. Like, the negative energy in small amounts is not a problem, but he's balanced very nicely there on metal. He's also got a lot of anti-air units, but he's neglected to get the turrets, which I think is fair enough. Like, this is going to stop an air rush.
It certainly is, although having them all in that square block is not necessarily the best use of them. Splitting them up, perhaps, so you have a few scattered around the base, just gives you that overall web of coverage.
Yeah, and it makes them less vulnerable to bombers. Like, at the moment, if especially Cybran bombers with their kind of chaff bombing, their AoE bombing, they could take out a good swathe of them in one run.
Yeah,
whereas if
they certainly can.
Yeah, well, if you split them up like Dinky, he'd be a little more protected. And then over here, there is an attack going on as well. Those 10 units that were produced earlier are here now. So what we'll do is we'll watch this fight while we have a look at Alex's base. So he's got 2 air, 1 ground, slightly fewer power generators, but that's not a big deal. He's got these mass extractors up here. Yeah, this is just kind of an exploration by Mike, a little bit of raiding. Slow this down, because he's done 3 things here. He sent these guys up to explore the main base, which is scouting, as you said. He's targeting this metal extractor as a priority, so he's split off to do that. And he's chasing these AA units with the other 4 here. And I think splitting his focus like that is really good, actually.
Oh, it's brilliant. He split his focus to damage economy, get information, and take out a series of units that have no defense against the units that have just been sent in.
So that's very well played there from Mike. Good tactical analysis. He's also left this guy by himself lonely up here, but that does protect that metal extractor. We'll see how long he lasts, but it could be a nuisance. Going back up. I mean, this attack is literally just a raid, because he's lost this. He might lose some stuff up here, but Alex is pretty confident that his commander can go down and sort that out. His resources are pretty good as well, partially probably because his commander's not producing, which is another success for Mike's raid, if we're honest, but especially at this early stage.
Causing that all-important distraction to the commander and keeping the economic pressure on, really. These early strikes are not to be sniffed at. They can have significant impacts in the late game and really affect when you start to hit that Tech 2 point efficiently, whilst having your economy still reasonably strong, and then starting to focus on your own strategy and whilst churning out your units to fulfill that.
Indeed. Now, so over here, I've sent some bombers down because we're about to launch a joint attack. Like, we know that we've removed a lot of Alex's anti-air, but Mike did shit his pants a little bit when he saw some some other coloured bombers circling over his base. But we cleared that up. We avoided a diplomatic incident.
Got to pay attention to those all-important colours on the map. Remember your teammates.
Indeed. So Alex is a gunship here now, which is going to put paid to these tier 1 units in next to no time. But Mike's still sending them off. Like, he's sending them towards where he knows the metal extractors are, because we can all see the map. So he knows which objectives he has to hit. Similarly, these guys are toast, but they just don't know it yet.
No, they lack that scouting information to see up to the top of the ramp. Plus, you've got the gunships there. Perfect counter from Tech 2 to just stop that Tech 1 rush. Which is a shame, because we've got a second group going around, and I can see at the start of Mike's base, well grouped, because they're right in the middle at the bottom of the ramp, and he's got the other ramp covered as well, so he'll know as soon as anything starts to come up and attack him. Aside from perhaps air, if it comes across the side, might catch him a little off guard.
Yeah.
But at this stage, the Tech Ones, aside from just being a nuisance and sort of keeping that little bit of pressure up, they're sort of dead in the water now with the gunships out in the field.
Indeed, although it does still take time to kill them, so they might still be able to achieve a little bit of raiding potential. So we're going in, following up our initial success with an immediate bombing run. But Alex has reproduced his anti-air dudes. But that first wave, I managed to get one bomb off to destroy a few of them. And it's pretty important, because we also spotted his commander. Moving a couple more there on the pass. And we did quite a lot of damage. There's 2,000 damage in the pass.
Yes, reasonably significant for using Tech 1 bombers at this stage of the game. To take off almost, what would we say,
Fifth?
A fifth? Yeah, fifth of the health. That's a pretty significant impact. You'd have to say that at that moment in time that Dyson was probably a bit worried.
Yeah. But his anti-air defence cleared up Mike's bombers. I sent mine off seeing that he had significant to try to do something up here, but I don't think it's going to... Oh, I get a drop-off, but I don't... Oh, I get the engineer. Lovely. Tasty.
Excellent.
Yeah. And Mike's got another tier 1 rush already on the way, very well organised. Moving on into the tanks, which are slightly beefier, slightly more damage. That's all going well for him.
We can see an important change though going up into the into yours and Dinky's regions, starting to take those NPC areas with your workers, which is fantastic. Not sure what time that's exactly started, but it's one of the better moves in this situation of the game. It must have been a point where you both suddenly discovered that there weren't any active point defences there, so that these were quite literally free game.
Yeah, so 2 responses here. One, Dinky's microing here. He's looked at the map as his engineer got there, or noticed it, whereas I just queued up a whole pile of mass extractors for this engineer that can to go and do. I think he's going to come down here, do that one, do this one, and then he ventures into the middle. Whereas I think Dinky just told his worker to do this one, clicked on the idle worker, and then saw this. So because he's had his attention drawn to it, he's taking it earlier. Whereas I don't really care about the engineer, he's off to make metal extractors, so I missed this initially.
Yeah, which is a bit of a shame, because particularly at the start of the game, having that extra early Tech 2 power plant followed by right next to it a radar system just outside the front of your essentially well fortified entrances below the ramps would have been ideal to spot any early rushes.
Indeed, and on a map as symmetrical as this, it can be assumed that if this setup is here, it is also here. So spotting this, what Dinky could have said was, you know what, this is an identical setup to the other side, I'll send my tier 1 engineer over here, he takes this radar station, and then he gets a lot of forewarning about my movements. I reckon that radar probably covers to about there, not starting area, but a lot of the avenues of, well, both avenues for coming out of there with land units at the very least.
Exactly. It would probably just cover the entrances, I would imagine, which is enough to capture your patrol path to see general sizes of units moving about the map.
So this is Mike again, like he's already got some tier 2 gunships, he is churning stuff out. And this is from a player, by the way, everybody, who refuses to build engineers. He's immediately started hitting Alex's ACU again, he's got the bombers coming in.
Oh, doing some significant damage there.
Yeah, gunships unopposed can churn out.
Less than half health.
Like a volley from gunships does very little, but they get a lot of volleys off very quickly when they're max fueled. So, thankfully for Alex, Dinky sent his anti-air down as well and saw off the attack, but it was close, like uncomfortably so. And Alex knows that he's being targeted quite a lot, so he's probably quite hot under the collar there.
Yes, I should imagine so. But that was a beautiful defence by the Dysons. Sending down the additional air support was exactly what was needed at that point. I dread to think how quickly this would have been over for Alex had that just a little bit of extra support was not there.
And now they are doing the correct thing. They are counter-attacking. What I should have done, if I'd noticed, I don't think I did, but if I had noticed that Dinky's planes had all come down here, I should have gone and at least made a probing attack. I know that Dinky's probably got anti-air defences, but there's no harm in testing them. I've got a few tier 2 fighter bombers. Tier 1 defense is not going to be great against those, so it's definitely better than those.
Looking at those and sort of numbers coming down, which obviously on the team you can see Mike's scouting information. Seeing those numbers should sort of give you some indication that perhaps these are the vast majority of units that are would be normally protecting Dinky's base. So would potentially lean towards it being a little on the open side.
And at the very least, I know that Dinky's attention is down here, along with Alex's. So that's something I could take advantage of. Unfortunately, like, Mike has only built, like, this is his defense. It's about 50. It's 75 tier 1 and tier 8. And still, like, these guys, these tier 2 fighter bombers get the power plant. They achieve something. And now they're...
I would say just there, and again to point out that where those fighters are, just on the edge, for the fact that these are all focused in one area has meant that as soon as the bombers get past, there's nothing to catch up with them and hit them.
So if you have
having
like
those
10 up
if they were spread about just a little bit more, just have say a collection of 10 there, 10 down at the base, 10 off to the rear, that means anything that goes over is immediately under all 3 fields of fire as soon as it gets in.
Indeed, and planes aren't very good at staying in one place. Like, they can't hover, so if you try to keep them moving, like, in the middle, they'd overlap some of their fields of fire. Pretty terrible. We saw, though, the raid was pretty successful. 2 important power pieces, especially when you've just moved into Tech 2. That first generator, pretty important.
It is, but thankfully, although it's been destroyed, because of the carcass, if you will, the ruins of the building, does lend itself towards its own reconstruction. So, as much as of an inconvenience as it is not the biggest loss in the world.
Indeed. And Mike's already sending out more attacks. Like, it's barely bothered him. Like, I really want to point out that he has 2 engineers. Like, just to back up the fact, or 3 engineers. Mike has 3 tier 1 engineers and isn't bothering to use them for anything useful. Like, I say that they are certainly. Well, this one's not. But these 2 are helping the building produce stuff, but they're not building things themselves. You know, he's not expanding around the map. He's not claiming these back, and that is the downside to not using your engineers actively.
And it's also got to be said, Chad, your Air Force has really stepped up in these last few minutes.
Yeah, it's basically all I'm doing. As you can see, I've got an air staging beacon here. I'm going to build. I've got another one down here, and I think I build a 3rd one up here on the patrol route, and that keeps my planes fueled. It's basically all I've got, apart from engineers. And if we have a quick look, Mike's going to do a raid in a bit, so we'll have a look at that in a moment. Nope, that's the wrong person.
I would say, looking at your air units and the fact that we've got these walls that have been built right across the top of the ramps to just stop those extra units going in, I dare say you've got the makings of a new tactic there, the flying turtle.
Hey, yeah, indeed, the winged turtle. So I just did a check there. I've got like 15 to 20 of the tier 2 fighter bombers. That's quite a lot if I wanted to go on a raid. And I've got some tier 3 fighters floating about as well. I've got a lot of tier 1s. So I'm pretty covered on the defensive. I need to get into the mindset of using fighter bombers as bombers rather than just fighters. I think it's a trap I fall into a lot.
Yeah, it's important to use their different distinctions to their fullest ability. Doing the raids on them as such is really beneficial. I know historically we've had some issues in our games where for some reason that they haven't deployed their payload, but it's something that I think we need to practice with and really get down. I haven't had too many issues myself with the fighter bombers, but there are times where you go to select a target and there's a bit of an issue.
I think they need to have sight of it for a long time leading up to their drop. So, like, because their sight bubble is relatively small itself, like, it's not big, then they don't see their target and they have to make a pass over it. But if you've got sight of a target already, like doing another raid here, very good. Those bombers a bit askew. Again, like, I can see, I don't know that these are coming down, but I can see that there are 4 here, and we know that he's lost a bunch. Like, I'm just not adding up. I'm too focused on whatever I'm doing, which is apparently producing more things that I won't use. But yeah, I think the fighter bombers do need a little bit of sight advantage on their target before they can drop their payload. So sometimes they have to do a run over the. I don't know.
I think they need more of a more of a lead really, just onto what their target is. You look at their sort of arcs of fire; it's quite large when it comes to the bombing run. You'll notice when Mike's battalion went to take out that forward mass extractor and power plant, that they had quite a lead off to the back past the run, and started to turn around when Mike noticed Dinky's forces coming down to clean those up, and he changed path. But otherwise, the circle for coming back round to get that run, it's quite significant. So perhaps that's why their bombing runs are not always as successful.
Indeed. This is quite sad. They've literally passed in the night. They cannot see each other. So Mike doesn't know that these gunships here that are going to really screw these guys up are grounded, and he could take them out before time.
Dyson doing a bit of Dinky rather doing a bit of scouting coming down from the north there, testing Mike's defences.
Yeah, he's taken out that. See, these first ones didn't drop their payload, but those second ones did. So I think it is that run up that they need. Man, these are nice.
Yeah, they've got quite a long lead on it.
So maybe that's all it is. And this is just a raid, but it's very good. It's a small number of ships. Like, again, if mine and Mike's communication was better, if we were more tactically aware, I am going to do a check over here now, finally. But if he said Dice has got 10 planes over here, I can like double click mine and be like, well, I've only got 20, so.
Well, the really nice thing about that attack as well is the fact that Dinky went in for that strike. He did his damage, he took out 3 mass extractors, and he didn't get greedy. He immediately pulled out, now taking the 4th mass extractor, but on your side.
Yeah, and he gets more as well. Like, this is one of my infamous resource hubs that I didn't build behind my base because it's getting pretty predictable, and unfortunately, that is part of the reason it gets screwed up here. So, because if he hadn't come through, and this is a really good avenue of attack that Dinky's chosen. He's just come in here because this is like allied territory and allied border, so it's one that's usually going to be less well protected. And like my patrol path takes me past it, but we can see on the Dice Alliance side, there's nothing there protecting it.
No, they're just able to, when coming into your side, they've been able to penetrate in and just move up that inside there. But you're quite right, on the Dyson side, there's nothing. All of Dinky's air is out in the field doing what it needs to, taking some quick raids and tactical advantages. And Dyson's air force is just really starting to gain traction and build up. But there's nothing to really intercept it. Those flight paths are really wide, so reaction time is going to be slow. I don't see any air staging facility, so at some point these are going to run out of fuel and really struggle to keep moving and keep up with the enemy as soon as they come into range.
Indeed. And you can see his patrol path as well. That security that he feels for having an ally here is affected this patrol path because he's literally cut off that north section. So if I flew in like 5 fighter bombers this way, they'd go in without being spotted, and I could drop them either up or down, just like Dinky did.
Just to point out, Mike's going in for a quick rush there at the front.
Yeah, but it's a bit desperate.
All taken out.
Yeah. The tier 1 bombers, 5 tier 1 turrets, they were on radar, so they were known they were coming, and Mike had no sight going in. But this time, he's got some objectives, he's got some targets. Unfortunately, he's just grounded these. So, and Aeon gunships are actually AA, they have the anti-air capabilities, so they could have taken out a tier 1 interceptor, but
a little bit of that scouting information.
Yeah. But now Mike's following up, or it looks like he's following up on that early scout, but maybe he's coming back round to bother Alex again.
I want to say I think he might be looking to find that gap in the middle.
Just nosing around a bit.
Oh no, he is going for that northern strike.
He is. Well, why not? When you've got a useless teammate like me who's apparently just building a flying turtle. I've got tier 3 engineers though, so that's a thing. They are leaving my base, which isn't so good on the face of it, but you know, they're pioneers.
What's that we can see up to the north?
Yeah.
Dinky's got a little. Excellent. Well played, Mike.
Yeah.
That's it. Take out those free resources.
Yeah, I think that's an important tactic. I mean, it might sound a bit of a joke to take out those free resources, but it's denying them. What I think Dinky didn't need to do there was build anti-air turrets. Like, I think that's an overcommitment that he didn't need to make.
Yeah, you either turn it into a full functioning forward fire base, which, to be honest, if you're doing that, you want to have Tech 3 stuff there and not bother too much with the lower techs.
Or at least Tech 2.
Because really you're looking... Exactly, because what you're looking to do is have it that it has significant coverage over that middle section.
Yeah, but what... Again, Mike has very successfully drawn out all of the air cover for both teams, essentially. There's some here for Alex, but not huge amounts. So if I, at this point, and I know that, look, I can see that on the map. I'm just living at home, living my best life, 25 tier 2 fighter bombers. They could do a number on resources.
Indeed, and it looks like it would have been the ideal time to commit some of those forces to doing such a strike. Because looking at the top there, despite Dinky's got a really good defence line and missile launchers, etc., lined up on the front line there, he's got what looks to be some transport ships there. So obviously planning to do some sort of strike in the future.
Yeah, again, I just need to... I don't know why I got into this PTSD attitude of I'm going to be attacked. I think it's partly because Mike and I didn't communicate about how much, watching this back, I didn't realise how much Dinky was nettling Mike. And if Mike had, maybe he told me, but maybe if he pointed it out repeatedly, I might have needed that. If he'd said, you know, I don't think Dinky's got any stuff at home, or he's attacking me yet again, I could have just gone and experimented. Which is weird, because like when I play Age of Empires, I'm all about raiding. And then in this game, apparently I forget all of that.
Well, sometimes it becomes an all-encompassing goal to just reinforce that line. It's almost the turtle syndrome, because you've managed to close yourself off, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure you're shooting for a goal, a very specific one, and you're not ready to come out until you're there.
Yeah, that's it. And well, what I want to do is get to a stage where I can manage this production of however many air. Well, let's slow down and have a look at bases, shall we? There is a raid going on, but it's just for metal extractors, so it can be talked about in a moment. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 air factories, one of them tier 3. Yeah, I want to basically have resources, I think, if I remember back to the grim past when this was, to maintain production of all 3 of those factories at least tier 2 or above. All 6 of those factories, rather. And then I want to be able to have spare resources to go and do something else. As you can see, I've run out of metal. So I don't have those resources, and I think I'm kind of locked in that mindset of thinking I just need to make more resources while maintaining this production. Or I could just turn off all of this production, you know? Look at this.
You've already got a significant force that's just standing there and, you know, it's holding the line. They probably could have... you could have lost a couple of minutes of production.
Yeah, indeed. So, like, there's 14, 5, 25, 27. Okay, only 27 metal there. I think I'm upgrading mass extractors at the moment. Yeah, that's what it is. So once I've hit there, I'm going for that resource gain, and I'm doing it like I think I made the decision. Oh, I'm over my metal. Instead of trying to compensate for that and cut down on production, which I very easily could have done, as we've discussed, I went, I'm going all in. We'll overproduce.
I don't think there's many players that tend to cut their production at that point. They sort of go for gold, really.
Yeah, and we'll call what I'm doing going for gold. So here Mike's building still more tier 1 units, but they are effectively annoying Alex. Like, he's taking out these mass extractors, and there's no cost here. Like, the resources are infinite in this game, so all Mike's doing is buying himself time. He's stalling Alex, and it's worked pretty much thus far. He's got 5 factories, which is unusual for Mike. but that's because I've told him just to produce tons of stuff. And like, super kudos to Mike. He was a great teammate. Whenever he wanted strategic help and I gave him options, he asked me for my advice and I told him which one I'd take, and then he did it. And he did it magnificently. So, well done, Mike. Thank you very much. Whereas, he was stuck with me and this mess.
And he's managed to balance himself very well. I mean, plus 14.
Yeah, plus 14 and minus 20. Minus unimportant. I find energy, if you're not in minus triple digits, it's pretty unimportant.
Yeah, exactly. He's got all that bank to work through, so it's not a problem to have that deficit for a while and then let it build up again.
Indeed. Now over here, Alex has only got one land factory. Just one land factory and a lot of air power going on. I know 4 factories. I know going into this game he definitely wanted to have that air power, and he's also managing to balance his resources. Like minus 16 metal's pretty bad, but he's got a bit of a bank, and he has just had some metal extractors removed, so we'll forgive him.
Yeah, it's not so bad to manage on, especially when you've got a cap there of 4,700 and at minus 18. Yeah, it's not too bad. That's livable for a couple of minutes whilst you finish off a project or two.
Yeah, indeed. And we can see here that despite Mike's raids, Alex has gone on the offensive. He's done a couple of nibbling attacks. He's also got to Tech 3, and he's got a Tech 3 gunship out, which is going to be really useful against any Tech 1 anything that comes out.
Oh, that's spectacular. Characteristically, I wouldn't really invest too much time in the Tech 3 gunships, just more so because of how long they really take to build. But if you're able to churn them out and build a Tech 3 gunship, why not? It's anti-air, ground attack, it's powerful.
It's got 6,000 hit points too. That's not small.
It's nothing to be sniffed at.
Indeed, and he's got 3 of them, so he's actually pretty secure despite everything Mike's done. Now let's have a look at Dinky. He's joining me in the No Metal Club. Look at his maximum metal though. It's massive. Sorry, mass. His mass is massive, or at least it's a massive hole where his mass should be. He's got a shield generator over his base. Probably good. I mean, partly. In a lot of our games, Dinky's suffering from last game syndrome, where he's experienced a lot of my bombing, and he's witnessed that I do a lot of bombing, and he knows I'm on the other team, so he's made the tactical decision to reinforce this Tech 1 web with some Tech 3, some Tech 2 stuff. He's pretty solidly defended here. He's got this shield gen as well over his production. He looks pretty safe. He's building a strategic missile launcher.
Going for that late game play. Oh, interesting. It should probably be noted that in our gaming group for quite a while we have all stated no nukes for quite some time. However, the gloves are now off. We decided it would be far more fun and interesting to remove that no rush rule and go for those weapons, because I think it was a point that you raised, Chad, that if you can have Tech 3 artillery, you may as well have nukes, because there's just no counter to them.
Indeed, there's very they're interchangeably destructive at long range, and at least you can build anti-nukes. I do have to say, I wasn't. Oh, hello, what's something shooting? I couldn't see it. Oh, I'm scouting. That's all it is. I'm finally scouting. I left my defensive line. I'm so proud of past me. I have to say that I don't mind nukes because of the anti-nuke building, and Dinky was one of the most powerful voices against nukes, and I think what he did this game was like, fine, if we're allowed to build nukes, I'm going to prove why no one likes them. Goes the strategic missile launcher.
Well, if you're going to go for it, go big.
Well, it proves his point, right? Like, if he does it and we agree with him, then he's like, yes, I was right. So why not? I think it's actually a very commendable approach to the argument.
It certainly is.
How it goes for him, though.
But also, I think with regards to Dinky's defensiveness as well, and making sure to have those shields to protect from bombing runs, there have been previous games, and like you say, last game syndrome a little bit, that he's been caught in the middle several times and has had a lot of to and fro's with Mike. So I think he's just really trying to make sure that doesn't happen this game. Granted, it's a bit more stable because it's 2v2, whereas we would be in potentially a 5-player match, but all v all.
Yeah. So I've sent these guys over just to have a little nose. What I'm trying to do here is remove the anti-air defences, because the gunships are much better at that than the bombers that I don't have. But I needed more, frankly, because he's got these 2 tier 3 fighters, and I know that now. And we'll see if I respond with overwhelming force, as is my nature, or if I don't bother, as is apparently my current new tactic. Mike,
we've got a split attack going in for Mike there. We've got the gunships going in from the south and a couple of units going in from the north.
I don't think these counters going in, sadly.
Lazy gunships.
Other thing we should talk about in Dinky's base is this setup. Now, after a little bit of testing, as was seen in a previous replay, it's been discovered that one of these bad boys supports these in a way that's more energy mass efficient than building the Tech 3 mass fabricators. So this is a really nice setup. I mean, I might build a shield generator to one side because, as you've pointed out several times, these things do have a tendency to pop loudly.
They're a little bit of a pinata, especially bearing in mind the explosiveness of, I suppose, this is the thing to consider, is the explosiveness of not just the Tech 3 power generator, but of these Tech 1 mass fabricators. Sorry, Tech 2 mass fabricators. Because they don't have a lot of health.
No.
One pops, it damages the one next to it, and then that all cascades around and damages the big thing in the middle that is also highly explosive. So you kind of get into this situation where, although it's a good energy to mass trade-off, it is also exceptionally vulnerable.
Yeah, so he's got some anti-air defences there, but frankly, if we'll see if past Chad decides to do this. Still 25 of them. We've got 10 gunships. I think 10 gunships with the 25 fighter bombers could easily pop that. It's tanky, but it's not.
Oh, definitely. And especially with his commander in such close proximity. He may be just below the shield or on the border of the shield, but the explosion that you would get off from bombing that point right now, they would get in, they would take that out, and they would cause a significant disruption and a little bit of worry to his commander.
Yeah, indeed. But do I do it? Let's turn the speed back up and find out. Oh, I mean, the tension. Will past Chad actually get off his butt and do something? We'll see.
Well, you've got this good line from where Dinky's... are these spy planes he's got working there, or are they?
No, they are superiority.
Superiority fighters.
They're
certainly drawing a certain amount of your units out.
But he's not got enough to, like. If he pops over, if I pop over a little bit more, I'll find out that he's only got these Tech 2 defences. Sorry, Tech 1 defences. And if I send the fighter bombers to deal with them, then I'll probably be alright.
Yeah, they won't last too long, and you've got significant air superiority that, hell, you could probably send over a lot of your intercepting forces, because currently there's, apart from Dyson down in the south, there's no real worry of an air counter-attack. No. You could quite happily go in and use them as the cannon fodder to lure all of those point defences.
Indeed, and it's a tactic that I do use. But I think, I don't know, I get locked in this mindset as well that this is what I'm doing, so this is what everybody else must be doing because they're not doing land. But they're not.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it becomes that worry of, okay, if you've not got much in the way of an air force and you've not got much in the way of a land force, what are you spending your money on?
Indeed, and I've assumed it's air defence, and that's wrong.
Yes, because he's already kind of got it established. So if he was going to keep focusing on the air defence turtle, you'd expect to see sort of more Tech 3 coming in, and again bolstering the air presence. But there's none of that at the moment. So the question has to be, aside from the fact that we already know he's working on strategic missiles, what else is his game plan?
Indeed. What I should have done, I think, is built a radar station over here.
Yes, indeed, because then that would have given you that certainty. Oh, we just saw the air transports move there a moment.
He's just doing a little bit of scouting, just trying to pull off my air defence, which would work if I only had a little bit, because like these 5 would come down, and then he'd be clear. But I've got this, I've got this, I've got all of this. Like, there's just too much air defense in that ring, really, to draw it out in the way he's hoping. But
he would really need to send some sacrificial lambs into a good little group. Maybe if he spammed out some Tech 1 interceptors or spy planes just to rush in, draw everything out and leave.
Indeed. He's found a bit of a hole in the anti-air defence there, but I've got the gunships in the vicinity. So they come over and he drops.
Did they get the drop?
They get the
yes.
drop, yeah. And it's a nice little force. Like 3 Tech 3 siege bots by themselves are dangerous. And then these are pretty horrifically powerful too. But he focuses on getting the transports out, which I think is a mistake. And
yeah, because they're just sitting there currently being cannon fodder.
And it gives me precious time to respond. And you can see that I do by dragging most of these, not this guy.
I think that was a double click there to get all the gunships over.
I'm not going to lie, it may well have been. Yeah, so these guys are pretty dangerous. But look, these 5, I clearly tell them to mop up the mobile missile launchers, and then they're like, did our job. And then these 3 siege assault bots get to rampage through my base.
Oh no, yeah, because they're just pushing forwards.
And the next,
and there's nothing in the patrol path to encounter them.
Because I've dragged it all up already.
Yeah.
So they've missed, and I can see them. Like, I should do something about it. I don't though for a while. That's a shame, isn't it? I lose 2 Tech 1 mass extractors. Meh.
Again, as you were saying before, perhaps if you had that radar information just at the edge of that ravine, that it would have just given you that bit more insight, especially as you're in Tech 3. I mean, it wouldn't have been much to get an Omni sensor, which would cover most of this map. Even the Tech 2 would give you significant advantage to just seeing the other edge. And you could see if there's any patrol pattern as such from units the other side.
Indeed. Now these guys get into my base. Look at this! The rampage begins. I take 1 air defence. Spoilers, they never get replaced. I finally respond with gunships. If I'd done this like here, this would never have happened. So he's targeting my mass. It's pretty good. He's targeting this power generator, which is pretty good.
And it's taking time to take those out.
Oh, mate, they're tanky as hell. 3,000 hit points, but they don't quite manage it. Yes! Time to perfection.
But still, let's have a quick look at your resource generation.
I think it's balanced out because I've got this
yeah.
now. So I'm okay
not
with losing.
Not such an impact for yourself. Obviously, some significant losses, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a little bit of a scrape, nothing
Indeed.
more.
The reason I don't have an Omni sensor up is because they're extortionate on your energy supply. So I like to have one of the Tech 3 generators up and then build it next to it for the.
They are.
Stuff.
I believe it's 2,500 power.
Yeah, which is like what one of these produces. What? But
might be slightly less.
Yeah,
but it's still significant.
Yeah, indeed. The Tech 2s, I could have happily put one up here, and that would have solidified my defensive response so much more.
Yeah, it certainly would. You can't undervalue the amount that radar at the start. Obviously, we all know, particularly on these maps, it's rubbish. It gives you very limited range of information. The best thing to use it for is, for instance, out on these outer points of the cliff edges, just so you can see when something's coming. Because at that stage in the game, nothing's going to be able to really shoot up the cliff. You're okay, and you just get that little bit of extra warning. But yeah, upgrading those to Tech 2, that gives you, as you can see, in fact. Is that an Omni sensor we got?
No, that's the upgrade option into an Omni sensor.
Ah, yes.
So this
but as
is
you can,
Tech 2.
But as you can see from that grey outline, that's significant. If you had that on the edge, on the very edge, you could definitely see over and into your opponent's base.
Indeed, but as we've been discussing, the Omni sensor will hit at least up to here, if not further. It's such an improvement, so the power cost is really justified.
Oh yes, definitely. And for the fact that the Omni sensor has several different radar modes within it.
Yeah.
So anything that is you've got stealth and cloak, for example, from the Cybran. Anything on that inner circle of that Omni sensor is visible. No doubt about that. You can see it.
Indeed.
But they could get away with only being seen by line of sight on the outer circle.
Indeed. So. It's 35 minutes in. Let's have an update on endgame plans, shall we? Because we're entering endgame. This isn't finished yet. And this is a demonstration of how slow the strategic missiles are. This has been 10 minutes in the construction, and it's not even finished. More than 10 minutes. So
certainly is, and that's only just to build the launcher itself, not even to build a missile, which takes not quite as much time, but it's still significant.
And he's run out of metal too. Like, very delicately, nice balance on the power there, kudos. But very delicately run out here. So if you just stop building with an engineer, because I think these are... No, he's done that already. It'd be difficult. And Dinky's in the position where he knows I've got a lot of air power. Although he might be feeling slightly comfortable because I haven't attacked him, possibly, and he's got a lot of static defences. I don't know. But he might want to keep producing. So cancelling his production may not feel like an option for him.
Quite possibly, yes. And also, by the looks of things, he doesn't have too much in the way of live scouting information on your position. So, for all intents and purposes, he knows you've got a web of aerial units, but you are keeping them just for that. It's just a patrol path there. So perhaps he's focusing more on his insertion and drop tactics, and getting that strat missile launcher up.
Indeed.
But again, I would like to see a shield over that over that resource there. That's just been waiting to happen.
The lack of a blue shield over this, the slight discoloration, that makes you uncomfortable. The clarity.
It certainly does. It's against my turtling nature, but more so because it's an explosive pinata.
Yeah.
That is all the presents right there, just waiting to be taken.
Indeed, and it's a lot of his resource generation there. So hitting it would be good. Note to future Chad, don't do what past Chad did. So, looking at my base, I've balanced my resources wonderfully. Rebuilding this down here, I've got tons of energy, so I'm building mass extractors first. I've got this over here that's being built up as a heavy shield generator, so I don't commit the same sin, but also it's separate from my base, so it's not quite as dangerous and deadly to my commander.
Also, credit where credit's due. Looking at where you've got the new expansion just down to the middle valley there in the left, just between you and Mike. Whereas before you built stuff quite close to the mass extractor, and of course our opponents, everyone on the map can see the points of the mass extractors. So particularly if they're doing a bombing run, building slightly off of those points is not a bad idea. It just reduces that splash damage and target focusing when they have no idea that you've got it there.
Yeah, and these two Tech 3 defences are going to stop Tech 2 raids of that size again. Like, there's no way 8 fighter bombers are getting in here now. Like, you'll get 2 down, but they're not going to be able to destroy anything, really.
No, there'll be some damage done, but with those 2 Tech 3 launchers, I mean, they do focus fire on one particular target, and they've got a reasonable range, so any fighters coming in, they'll focus on that. They'll probably take it down in the first shot, but it just means that they'll be a bit slower on the uptake for the rest of them, but they'll take them down, but there'll be a little bit of damage to take into consideration.
Indeed. And this little resource hub, it looks really open because it's in the middle of nowhere, there's no defences, it's not behind a wall. Again, I didn't want to build it behind my base because everybody has learned that I do that. So I've built it here because it's inside my defensive web and it feels pretty safe, and if it goes up it's not a massive deal, so that's like tactical logistics.
That makes sense.
I'm going to say yes, this is a very tactical decision because it is quite safe from the things that I've seen attacking me. I know that my opponents aren't really making land rushes or land attacks. Proof here. We're getting another drop over the side. Dragonfly, I like that name. Mike was going on an attack, it looks like, but he's brought his stuff back to deal with this threat. My commander has moved down here, out of the main base, which is great. He's building some anti-air facilities, and hopefully he'll do something else with his life, or run back to where it's safe.
Do you have him upgraded at this stage?
All spicy. This was the first game that I've experimented with this, and yes, I do. He's been capable of building Tech 2 stuff.
Excellent.
Yeah, I've got into that habit slightly more. I don't know when it happened, but
it makes them so much more versatile and useful, especially if you get the resource allocation with them. I mean, it takes a little bit of time to invest in, but it's free resource for keeping safe the one unit that you definitely need to keep safe.
Indeed, and I actually like the resource allocation one, so I'll go back on what I said previously. I don't think these transports get in. No, that's a sad time for Alex, but it's a nice little tactic, and he knows that Mike's base is pretty undefended, so he may as well test it. Mike's got fantastic resources as well. Look, how's that make
All
you
the
feel?
pinatas. That's awful. I mean, it's great for having all of that resource there and available to Mike for his production, but it's just so vulnerable. A quick sweep in from the north between your line and his line, there's no defence. There is nothing to stop that coming in. Even if it's just Tech 1 bombers. A couple of Tech 1 bombers just on the edge of those mass fabricators, done. Whole lot's going boom.
Yeah, it's like a one really large pinata next to a slightly smaller pinata.
Indeed it is.
Very efficient for resource generation. And it looks like Alex can't get into Mike's base, so maybe it's not so bad. Alex now has a lot of anti-air floating about. It's all tier 1, or mostly tier 1.
But he also has those Tech 3 gunships. Send one of those round. If he only knew about it. Although we do have some cheeky little transports just going in on the far left of Mike's base.
Some of them did make it. You know what the worst part is? He does know about it.
Yes, he does know about the pinatas.
Worst part, best part. Oh, Mike's getting another little raid off. Keeping these Tech 1 raids up over the course of the game, like, it does draw attention. It does. It's not a bad tactic, and it doesn't cost much resources to make 10-1 units, or 20, or however many Mike's sending up there to their doom.
No, and it's extremely undervalued just how effective they can be. If you've got, as it was there, an army of 28, if they rock up to a commander, yeah, that commander is going down if he is undefended. If he's just caught out of position, that's it. Or anything that's caught out of position for that matter.
Indeed, especially with the Aeon Tech 1 tanks, that's a really, really tight army. I mean, in the game before this, we were doing a free-for-all and Dinky's commander found himself on the wrong side of I think it was like a 30 bot Tech 1 rush from me. That was just a raid, but because his commander was on the wrong side of his base and didn't have any protection, I managed to take him out surprisingly early.
Did you see that? Just with those transports coming on the south of the map there?
Yeah, they just
that's genius.
Yeah.
That little path that Dyson took them on just sends them just off the map, which is perfect. Considering that line, how thin it is. If Mike's got any radar that's up, they've just completely disappeared and he's not even seen them coming.
But the other thing is, Alex knows Mike's attention is probably down here where his gunships were on that attack. So and that's something that Alex is going to clear up.
And he's going for it. Look! Takes down just one and the whole lot goes.
He takes down one and the whole lot goes, but all of their individual explosions took out the power plots. Like, he didn't even have to target them.
This is exactly what I mean about them just being the juiciest of pinatas.
Yeah. And now he targets this.
But I suppose you have to balance that off with how much you've gained from it compared to what you lose in that instance and how long it's going to take you to rebuild.
Indeed, but Mike's literally lost basically every mass fabricator that he's got and his power plants.
Indeed, because it doesn't look like he's even rebuilt the hydrocarbon plant.
He has not, no. But in fairness, at Tech 2 and above, that's not so important. But this was the point when Mike was like, I got hit really hard. And this was a change in our gear where Mike felt a greater urgency, and what I should have done as a good teammate has been like, you know what, I'm going to apply some pressure to all of this nothing that can defend against. Oh, only 20 now, only 20, but
indeed, but if you look at your gunships,
yeah,
that could be something that could easily have come down to Dyson and done some significant damage. Granted, Dyson's got a lot more. Well, he's got all of the of your opponent's interceptors, to be honest, really.
Yeah.
But having a quick blast straight down the middle of the map there between the flight path, you could have smacked straight into his centre base and done some significant economic damage with just a few gunships.
Well, especially if I'd sent all the gunships, so that's like 40, and the 20 fighter bombers, that's probably lethal if I can find his commander and click him. Even with the tier 3 anti-air, there's not that much of it, you know?
Yeah.
And commanders...
What have we got going on there?
Yes.
Sneaky. His Dyson's typical Tech 3 heavy artillery play.
Now this is interesting from the brothers, because one of them's building nukes, the other one's building the other long-ranged I'm gonna fuck you up weapon. So they are approaching this in a very good way. They're being attacked, well, Alex is being attacked, and now Dinky's being attacked as well by those 30 tier 1 players, but they're not going to get in. Like, that line is going to see him off.
It's just too solid. For Tech 1, no way.
Yeah, he might be able to take the turrets out, but he's not going to get into the base. But they're still attacking out, they're hitting Mike because they know he's the weaker player, and they're probably saving their big super weapons, because that's what they are, to deal with me, because they can't get into my base, but I'm not causing them any bother, so they need to deal with Mike because he's the problem, and then they'll deal with me with the super weapons. That's their game plan right now.
It is, and in fact, actually, I believe this is the first time that Dinky has actually managed to get a scout in behind your line. It hasn't gone in without any attention, but it's the first one that's gotten that far.
Indeed, and he's, I think, does this mean he's not got the nuke yet? But if we click on it... Oh, it's not even building a nuke. What? Oh, he's upgrading his commander at the moment.
No, but he's probably still trying to scout the location of yours just to make sure.
Indeed. And I think he might have spotted him there in this little...
Yeah, he made the clear fly over there.
Yeah. I am...
And then another little drop going into Mike's as well.
Yeah, indeed. But he's moved his anti-air defense, which has now been upgraded to tier 2, we can see, pretty unilaterally. And because of that, the attack move, these attack bots from Alex get distracted, because these are military units, so they're given a high priority, and he has to micro them. Yeah, they're just taking out all of these unimportant anti-air things, while Mike's gunships have come in and cleared up that attack. Which is such a shame for Alex after that first run through,
because that was such a good drop and infiltration. There was nothing there to stop them from just wreaking absolute havoc.
But compared with the first one, there's so many fewer targets of opportunity. Like, there's this that's been rebuilt. There's Mike's built a Tech 3 mass fabricator. See, now this is what we're talking about by them being less efficient. So this produces 2,500 energy. And this costs 3,500 to produce 12 metal. So, whereas if you got 12 independent tier 2 metal extractors, mass fabricators, they would only cost somewhere in the region of about 1,600 energy. So they are more efficient.
Yes, certainly are, and it's a tactic that's well worth taking into consideration when building resource farms. It's something that I haven't really experimented with as such. I have always gone for as soon as I've got the tech, I've gone for the big resource farms. But in terms of strategy, building the T1s around the T3s is something I've never given a try before, and I think it's something that could really pay off in the future.
I think it's much more efficient. I think one tier 3 power generator can upkeep the 16 tier 2 mass fabricators that you can fit round them by itself, and then you can leave that. You can just go off somewhere else, maybe put a shield generator nearby, and you can leave it there as a resource farm. So if it gets taken out, it pops, oh well, you'll rebuild it. And it doesn't really...
Exactly, as long as it's not near to anything else, no other infrastructure, then your line's going to be absolutely fine. You're not going to have any interruption aside from that potential drop off, and that's it.
Indeed. So we've got another drop here, and during the game, Mike and I thought that somehow Alex was getting his units in by land, which is just like how... I think there was some fatigue setting in or something, because Mike didn't tell me to attack. And we didn't figure out that, like, because we know that they've been using transports. We've seen them here. We've seen them here. We didn't figure it out. So, like, the Dyson Alliance was on point, and we were not at this stage. They were playing much better, I feel. They just couldn't, because of the early raids, because of the amount that they'd lost during their raids, they couldn't try to nettle me. And they couldn't quite capitalise on Mike. Although they don't need to, because again, they're building super weapons, so they're feeling pretty good about life.
That's true. But in response to that as well, one thing that can be safely said about the Dysons is that they've got a really strong play. They know how to work as a team. They know how to give commands to one another and really push that forward as an advantage for them.
Yeah, I mean, this patrol path is a good example. It's covering all of Dinky's side, all of his responsibility, up including the halfway mark. It's like 20 minutes too late, because 20 minutes ago that was when it was lacking, and that's when we should have taken advantage of it. But he's realised his error and he's fixed it. Mine is still selfishly not covering even that. Alex's is hovering around in the same kind of area. He's covering his half. Mike doesn't have an anti-air web. Mike's just relying on God knows how many
anti-air ground units to deal with everything that comes over.
70 of them.
And those Tech 1 ones at the front.
Oh god, yeah. 70 tier 2s. We're playing with 500 units, which is a good thing, because Mike's just hit the 250 cap. Crikey. He's got 120 AA units in play.
With no other support for them aside from gunships. I mean, to be honest, it's not a bad combination. They do each other justice. They've just got to be there when they're needed.
Indeed. I think it's fragile.
Yes, it certainly is. I mean, bust out those Tech 1 ones. In fact, it's probably something that's a little underrated in Supreme Commander, and that's throwing out those Tech 1 units, because they really do give a significant amount of rapid fire. You'll notice that the lower the tech, the quicker they fire, even if they don't do a lot of damage. So they're kind of useful to have kicking around, just as, if anything, to soak up a little bit of damage. Yeah, they'll pop in one shot, but that's a shot that nothing else has taken.
Yeah. On the note of having those Tech 1 attacks, these guys have been sitting up here for what, like 10 minutes? They're
finally going.
Like, they haven't been spotted. Like, they've just been sitting there doing nothing. They weren't even on this radar, I don't think, from Dinky. Look, he's only just aware of them now because they've been shooting. And then they've just got into the ring. Like, a complete stealth attack. Either that was a mastermind tactic where he fainted hard, got them in and was like, and I'll leave them here till they're forgotten, or he literally forgot about them. But
which would not be a surprise.
No. Now,
strategic launch detected.
Oh. That missile is ready and going.
Now, let's slow it down. Put some. Well, I can't do this anymore because you've seen the replay. Put some bets down on who you want it. Loyal viewers, where do you think it's going? Do you think it's going to finish off Mike? Do you think it's going to try to hit me? Do you think it's going to cause a switch in the commander numbers? Normally I'd ask Midge, but since I've failed at recording this once with him, he already knows where it's going.
Oh, we could have pretended.
Yeah, but it's not as fun if you pretend. It's not authentic. So
no, it's true.
Talk about the decision for Dinky to nuke me, and where he's nuked me while it's flying. You've got about a minute.
I think where he's going to go, and I believe actually this was my anticipation last time, but he's going to go, as you should, right for that central hub, where you started, where all of your main shit is. If you go for anywhere else, you've got to be damn sure it's going to be a worthy payoff. You know that going for that starting point is always going to pay off. You have your starting, usually, 4 mass extractors, and they're going to be Tech 3 by this point of the game. You couldn't ask for a better target, and how to damage your economy and production so significantly.
Indeed, and it's often where commanders will stay as well, because it's the most heavily fortified area. So all of that is strategically accurate. And let's remember that Dinky made the strategically accurate play here. However, let's have a look at what he's nuking. Yeah, sure, 6 factories. Only 3 of which are tier 3. Some tier 3 mass, 2 tier 3 mass extractors. A tier 2 power plant? Yeah, there's a tier... No, that's an air staging beacon. There's a tier 2 power plant there. But it's quite a lot of production for stuff I've already produced. And have like a monopoly on. And some resources that are not my main resources.
And you had that strat defense just there, just not quite in time.
It's like it's 2% short or something. No, it's not built. It's no. Spoilers. So that's halfway built in time for this. But when I see the nuke coming over here, I'm like, my commander's not there. Most of my resources are not there. I can deal with that. It's fine. So this is like the advantage to building these resource hubs away from your main base. Look, there's my omni sensor. I told you I'd build it next to one of these. Yeah, it's the advantage to having these resource hubs away from your main base, so that if this is nuked or attacked or removed, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's a good way to consolidate your losses.
Indeed, but like he's made the tactically sound decision, like entirely on all the information he's got. This is the best place for him to nuke, in theory.
Which is unfortunate as well, because he scouted your commander earlier. He knew he was down south.
Well, yeah, but it might have been 5 or 6 minutes ago, so it makes sense that my commander might have come back.
Very true.
So, just look at that slowly. We can put classical music to this. It's like a Tom Clancy trailer.
And you can see that you've seen it. You're moving some of your units out of the way.
Yep. Some. All.
Just desperate, quick move.
Yep.
And instantly, all those Tech 1 buildings just pop.
Yeah. It's slightly beautiful. Literally, the popping noises as they explode. It's pretty insane. Well,
it is.
So, I've been nuked. And Mike and I had thought that one of us was going to get nuked. Probably not. Probably only about 5 minutes ago did we come up with that, when I started building my strat defense. So we were ready for it. And I was sad that it worked. I was sad that it wasn't, because it would have been so beautiful had it flown over this base and my strategic missile defense went, no! And then he couldn't even nuke this in response because it's got a strategic missile defense. Beautiful. But I was too slow. However, I don't give up and I don't panic because my commander's alive. Like, there's no need to.
I mean, if you quickly switch over to your resource generation, pretty sure you've got, yeah, there you go, +1, +28. You have the trade-off has been you've lost some of those mass extractors, but you've also lost the production. So really, you're in a reasonably good position. You're accruing mass. You're on the almost perfect +1 energy, despite having an omni sensor and building nuke defense. So it's not a bad position to be in. You can easily come back from this.
And yeah, I've still got production over here as well. Like, I'm producing. Oh, these are just waiting. They're queuing. I've got.
Well, they're Tech 2. That's not insignificant.
No, but I've also got 3 Tech 3 ground factories here. Like, I have the capability to produce an end-game Counter-Strike quite happily. So I'm not in a bad location. Bad location? Bad position, as you say. So I've been nuked and I'm fine. Do I do anything about it though?
I would like to say I would hope so, just some sort of counter-offensive, but it looks like Dyson thinks that, or Dinky rather, thinks that you might be a tad on the vulnerable side and has gone in for a bit of pressure, but clearly he doesn't know the full scope of exactly what you've got and what you've lost in comparison.
Yeah, like 37, 60, 37 of them. Still 26 of them. Like, that airweb is basically unharmed by the nuke. So he did the right thing by following it up and being like, I'm going to hit him while he's weak, or I'm going to test him while he's weak. And then he tested the airweb and it was like, still superpower.
Exactly. Although this is where I would have loved to have seen a little poke back. Maybe a few of those gunships and a few of those air-to-air interceptors just to move over and maybe just try and make a little dent in his line.
What I would have loved to see from past Chad is a bit of a Control A attack move over the base. Because I know that Dinky's putting a lot of resources into that nuke now. Like, I'm certain. I've built a strategic missile defense here, and it's building an anti-nuke. And I think I'm building one down here as well. Yeah, oh, that's a power generator. There it is. I'm building a strategic missile defense down here as well. I'm responding to that threat, and I know that's where his resources are. So I should be like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my 150-odd planes and dump them on top of his base, watch them all die, and hope that they kill his commander. but I don't. Yeah, I've got no excuse. I'm bad.
But I can see as of the moment you have been taking the middle section of the map, which has not been challenged by anyone else, apart from Dacian just at this point.
Yeah, indeed. So this was a little of a grab earlier that players might have noticed. It was tactical, but it's not the most important thing, so I didn't zoom in on it. Sorry, everyone. It's a lot of energy, which is nice, and it's a forward position that's sort of defensible. It's up a hill. I could put some anti-air towers up if I wanted to. I could fortify it, make it one of those forward point defense blobs you were talking about. I haven't quite got around to it yet.
But in all fairness, you've had a few other challenges to focus on.
Well, I mean, that's nice of you, but really, I just got nuked, and that's it. That's all that's happened to me all game.
And in all fairness, it's probably the thing that actually managed to really sort of keep you somewhat stable at that point. Having those middle free resources to claim has, I think, contributed to you balancing out.
Probably. Yeah, I'm running out of energy now.
But what's this we've got as well down in the bottom left-hand corner with Mike?
Oh, yes. So, Mike...
I see his commander is not in his base, which can usually only mean one thing.
Indeed. So, Mike has said, I can't rebuild. They're going to keep attacking me. And I believed him. This was bad tactical acumen from me. Because I could have looked at his base and been like, we need to figure this out. How are they getting in? We could have talked about it and gone, it's definitely going to be transports. All we have to do is set some patrol routes. It's going to be fine. I've got spare anti-air. I could have lent Mike some. But I just believed Mike when he said, I'm going to keep being attacked. I need to get out of my base and do something. And I was like, okay, build Tsars. So Mike's building a Tsar.
Standard technique.
Yeah.
It's gotten to the right point in the game. We're looking at endgame sort of scenario. If we haven't seen the Tsar or Elder experimental unit, I'm very surprised.
Indeed. It's like at that 50 minutes in, we've seen a nuke go. I think Mike's slightly worried his base is now super vulnerable to being nuked, so that's why he's done it out there. Or I might have said, if you do build one, build it away from your base. And so he's building that end-game decision, while the focus has temporarily switched off him, who's been set back and hasn't been so efficient in nettling people. And it's switched to now dethroning me as the most dangerous potential threat. This isn't ready yet.
Indeed, but I mean, look at Dacian's base. Currently, looking at what forces he's got, it's all focused on the Tech 3 artillery, and all that air that he had channeling round on those patrol paths has just vanished.
You're really rubbing in the fact that what I should have done is used any of my air offensively. So
only a touch. Only a touch.
I deserve it. I've got no excuse, and I can't reproduce it now. So.
It's okay. This is past Chad's problem, not current day Chad's problem.
Oh,
current day Chad has done very well with his forces, and I hasten to add, in potential future videos, you may see a tactic that I was most impressed with.
Yeah. Oh, we'll talk about that after this commentary, because the last game I remember playing, I lost. We all lost quite heavily.
We all did, but it was just what you did. You did exactly what I thought you should do.
Oh, yeah,
and I'm so proud of you.
I think my best plays come when I'm almost taken out and I have to do something. Like, the last chance dies, that desperation. When Desperate Chad comes out, he can make tactical decisions. Whilst I feel comfortable, though, I do shit like this and hover around my base with potentially lethal air forces.
Indeed, and it also does show that you also reconsolidated a chunk of your air force. You've brought that patrolling line forward, which is a really good decision, to be honest, because it means your air force is going to be more reactive to anything that just punches in that front line, as opposed to having the more surrounding ring around your base for the patrol path, which, to be honest, everyone does at the start because it is the most efficient thing to do. Later on, not so much. You're better off to just sort of protect a line.
Let's talk about that for a moment, shall we? It's not great to have a ring in a map where you're in the corner, because the back side of the circle isn't going to be useful, is it? Like where these guys are flying.
Yeah, that's right. However,
never gonna be useful.
it's more useful at the start because units that punch in, they're not very quick as such. So it's good to have something to catch on the other side, because sometimes, particularly at the start, there's likely to be a gap in your ring, and they're just going to punch through, get to the back, find out everything you want to know, and either cause some aggro or get out. Whereas at this stage in the game, yeah, all the units are fast. If they're going to punch through that front line, they'll punch through the back line. So just have it in the much thinner oval double line at the front as your patrol path, because the chances are you've got the DPS at the front there to deal with them.
Yeah. So Mike here is is going on a little scouting foray, and he discovers this set of units, which is the first offensive ground charge that has come out of. But we're excluding the transport shenanigans because they were clever, but they're not the same as ground offensive. So what Dinky's doing here is he's transporting some siege units with some frontline protection and some stealth generators. And not just some stealth generators, there's a lot there. There's, 3, 4, 5? So he's got redundancy. And unfortunately, Mike's weird anti-air blockade, that was there for no real reason, I think. He just needed to get them killed for PopCap. It's provided that extra scouting that is purely by chance. One of these amazing scenarios that occurs whilst playing Supreme Commander, where the unit composition coming towards you is just perfect. You're not going to see it coming, apart from the fact you literally just stepped on it. Yeah. And what I loved was that it was essentially the most pointless thing to ever have been that far forward and to get involved in scouting. This amazing end game charge formation has run across 10 to 15 tier 1 anti-air cannons and been like, what are you? Why are you here? And all the tier 1 anti-air cannons reported back was, guys, there's some really bad shit coming back towards you.
That's it. Now's the time to mobilise. We've seen it coming. You've had your fair warning. Now prepare.
Yeah. But in other news, Dinky's commander has left his base. This is an interesting decision from Dinky. And I'll explain his reasoning for it later. And again, take into account that thus far, I think Dinky has made very sound tactical decisions all the way through the game. So when we come to talk about this decision to move his commander, remember that. I just want to highlight it now. It's happened at 51 minutes.
It's a bit of an odd play. As soon as you tend to see the commanders leave the base, you think, right, you're going for an experimental play of some sort. But as it stands at the moment, there's no additional support that's gone out with him. He's completely undefended.
No. What's that? Oh, so this is a scout trying to find my commander. Trying to find something for that nuke missile system. And I think it just spotted my commander there. Which is a shame, because I can tell you now that this strategic missile defense is not up. But yeah, so this for me, it used to signal...
strategic launch
detected.
detected.
Dear, we'll slow that down. So this used to signal experimental play, but for me now, if we click on Dinky, we've got some time before we figure out where that nuke's going, and we scroll in. His commander's tier 3, this signals resource field. Because this is what I do with my resource field the whole time. And he's playing Cybran, they've got stealth generators. Wherever they are.
Yes, very true.
So I think I would say he's trying to recreate my stealth resource fields that I've used in previous games.
But building them where, as you mentioned so aptly earlier, exactly where you'd expect to build them, which is somewhere behind your base, not somewhere more obscure by being right in front of your opponent as such.
Yeah, and it's important to note that it's only more obvious that people build behind their base, because that's what I've done a lot, and people have seen it and been like, that's a really good idea. So that's why I switched it up. That's my best play, I think, this game, if I'm honest, thus far. It's been switching up where I put my resource fields. The fact that he's building if he is building a remote resource field, that's good. That's an improvement in play in itself. It doesn't matter where it is. The fact that he's doing it is a plus. Because, Mike's got no resources. And secret fact here, guys, I've been sending Mike metal and mass and energy so that he can build this thing. Like, because he's not bothered building any economy, because when I suggested he did, he said, no, they're just going to attack me. They haven't attacked him, not for like 15 minutes. I got nuked.
Yeah. Which is an absolute shame as well, because as we've discussed before, go out and get those mass points if you can, because they pay for themselves so quickly. Just take it, let it tick over. If your opponent destroys it or whatever, just denies it to you, that's fine. It's paid for itself in a few short seconds and given you some extra mass.
Indeed. But Mike, I think, has suffered from I'm under attack, like that PTSD. So he's doing that, and I admittedly have a lot of bonus resources right now because my production has been cut from 9 factories to 3. So I can spare the resources. Now, this is Dinky's second nuke. Well done him for getting 2 off. Where do you think it's going?
Well, given the scout that shot across the back of your base, I would imagine he's going to go straight for where your commander is hiding.
I would assume so too.
I'm looking at that angle as well.
Yeah, although nukes have this weird arc, so he's fired it from here and it can take some time to straighten up. So the reason that he could nuke Mike's base, but if you're using super weapons in any game, not just Supreme Commander, but in Supreme Commander, if you're using experimentals, if you're using nukes, if you're using tier 3 artillery, you do it against the most dangerous target, because they're the one who are best able to respond to it. And so,
indeed.
Yeah. And so he's found my commander, like you said, but he's already nuked me once. I'm still dangerous, and he's decided that he's going to try to remove that danger.
And it's the only sound logical decision. You are second at the top on the score. He has seen your force. He knows your position is well defended. He's nuked you once, and you're still going with that force. So the only logical conclusion is that he's got to hit you, because he knows that his brother has absolutely smashed the front of Mike's base. But rather strangely, that no one has been back down there, which I would say at this stage in the game is a little bit of a cause for concern, because Mike clearly hasn't given up. I would probably be questioning the tactics at this stage.
The other thing is Mike is still like 50,000 above Alex on the scoreboard. Even though he's had his base smashed, he's still a substantial score lead. So that is, like you say, that's signalling something is going on and he's still doing all right.
Exactly, and it should do for Mike to Alex as well. The fact that he's been hit repeatedly so quickly, so many times. What's he doing?
Yeah,
because nothing's come in.
Indeed, I think some fatigue was setting in. But you know what happened? Past Chad clocked out and Desperate Chad has clocked in. So as soon as I heard strategic launch detected, my commander cancelled what he was doing and he did a runner. And I can tell you, I right-clicked right there.
Excellent.
That's like the quickest, furthest point that he could reach from this obvious target. And you'll notice that all of my air power has congregated away from where it might get nuked. But also, because I'm screaming down the mic to Mike that this is it, I've got one shot, my commander might die. And I'm finally doing what I should have been doing like 10, 20, 30, even 35 minutes ago. So, second nuke goes off here, but that's already, written off. And I want to point out very briefly, it had surprisingly minimal impact on my resource generation, because my resource hubs are still safe. Also, sadly, this nuke defense is not quite finished building its... Oh, it had it! No! It wasn't in range.
It had one!
No! Why? It must have just skirted the range of that thing.
Yes, it did. Looking at the path, it came up in quite a straight line, cutting just across the front there.
So close. That's... galling.
And your commander escaped scot-free, if I recall correctly, or did he just...
He took about 500
just clipped the edge of the fallout.
Well, they were screaming down the mic. Mike was like, do it, find his commander. I'm like, I'm trying, where is he? Not in the base. Where do I think he might be? I immediately swing out over the back. 2 reasons. 1, less AA fire, more time to think. 2, resource fields. I don't spot him. Mike does, and he goes, he's right there, do it. I'm like, where the fuck is he? Tell me. Mike starts trying to describe it with words, and I yell at him to ping. There's the ping. And you can see that there's a slight pause where these guys kind of gather to try to be, like, where do we need to be? So I managed to get the right click on the commander, though. and then these guys kind of hover around. No, these guys land. That's awkward. Because what they should be doing... there we go. They're sort of flying around, they're soaking some AA fire, and it's... So, earlier we talked about Dyson's sound strategic decisions. If you're hoping that I'm about to say, and this was where he let down, this is where he failed, you're wrong. Because after the game he explained that he knew I liked my strategic bombers, and that's a fact, I do, I love them, they're beautiful things. And he thought, if I'm in my base, it doesn't matter if 50 strategic bombers fly over. This shield means nothing, the layered shield means nothing, the AA means nothing. I'm getting bombed into the Stone Age. So I'll be at the back, so they have to fly over my base, and I lower their numbers. And that is sound tactical decision making. Unfortunately,
that is.
Yeah. Unfortunately for Dinky, I don't have a single strategic bomber.
Just didn't go for that play this time.
I was moving into Tech 3 as my end game scenario. Tech 3 ground forces to just roll into his space because I knew we had very few defences. So here I come in with my Tech 2 stragglers, and there's not that much. Half of them have no fuel, by the way. So they're firing slower, they're flying slower, and it becomes this desperate thing of Mike's being like, kill him! I'm like, I'm trying! Because if I go out, Mike's going to die. But if I kill him, I'm still alive, right? Just. So if I can recover if we kill Dinky. It gets down, and Mike's counting it down as I'm trying to find more of my units to take AA fire. And yeah,
there we go.
It works. It pays off.
It's almost a shame he didn't stay where he was and just stay slightly further north, because it would have done him so much more of a favour, I think.
Well, if he'd stayed here, because I did get my Tech 3 fighters to fly over here, so they would have absorbed this SAM launcher fire to a certain extent. So yeah, we just saw it briefly. You would have seen it on the mini-map. If you rewind this replay, this is a Tech 3 kill force, of ground units that was marching on my base, on my commander, who's got nowhere to run.
And you've got nothing to defend against it either.
No, because I just
pretty much all
way.
of your point defence is anti-air. You've just got the wall, which would have delayed it a little bit, and there is no ground force at all.
Yeah, so again, sound decision making. And if you rewind the video, I should have mentioned it at the time, I should have slowed it down, and I got excited, so I'm not going to apologise, because excitement is cool. But Dinky set that marching at the same time, more or less, that he fired his nuke. So it was a contingency, it was insurance, more sound decision making. So despite all of those tactical decisions, and he's probably not going to enjoy me saying this because he's going to feel robbed and cheated, and you were. I robbed you. I cheated you by basically screwing up the entire game. Because if I'd attacked earlier, I wouldn't have had that air force. If I'd built my normal Tech 3 stuff, that's me finding his commander down here, by the way. We're just doing a little bit of a scout to check on Alex's base, because we haven't seen it. But if I'd made any of the decisions we have talked about in this commentary throughout the entire game, I would have died there.
Yeah, exactly. It would have changed the dynamic of the game so much more. Because you're quite rightly, as you've just said, you'd have lost a lot more of your force. But I do wonder if, at the same time of you losing some of your force, would you have really gotten to that exact same conclusion? Because it would have come down to the grind at the end, because you would be punishing Dinky's force and base as much as he would be punishing yours, and it would have been to and fro.
And I would have seen the strategic missile launcher earlier being built, I could have responded earlier. So you're right, those mistakes do add up to this scenario in a kind of a perfect storm of chaotic accidents.
Yeah, I wouldn't have necessarily said that he might feel he might well feel cheated and robbed, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it would have been the same result if you had gone in and fought, and that he would have won it. It would have been anyone's game. It would have been very interesting, and I think a lot more drawn out than probably about an hour-ish that we're going into for this replay.
Indeed, and if in all honesty, if I had we talked earlier about me sending in my air, and I've used the phrase lethal as an attack force. That's accurate. I could have possibly killed Dinky's commander earlier if I'd been more offensive with my air force. So, perhaps Dinky doesn't have to feel like he was robbed, but if he does feel a little bit that way, I can understand it. Like, he's played well, he's made good tactical decisions, he's raided, he's nailed my opponent, he's built that nuke launcher in defiance of the "we're allowing nukes" comment. He's used it in an offensive manner, but he then proved my point, which was nukes don't necessarily win games. I didn't even have a nuke defense that worked.
That's very true. And he also followed it up with the sound strategy, which is sending a force straight in to try and capitalise on that as soon as he's launched it.
Indeed.
The longer you wait, the more you negate what you've just done.
Indeed. So I can see how he feels. He might feel a bit robbed. Like, it's entirely fair for him to feel a bit that way. But at the same time, my response there, Desperate Chad, came out, and I made the right decision, which was, this is probably my last decision. What can I do that might affect the game still? So
I think you were absolutely spot on. It was the only decision you could do, because you had lost. Admittedly, you still had your resource farms, but Dinky would have had a lot more in terms of his resource to be able to conjure up a new force, or as he had the land force already going in, you wouldn't have been able to counter it. Not with the resources you had compared to him. Your only bet was for an all-in at that point.
Indeed. And I mean, so I've already made the decision. I've been nuked once. I'm not going to do anything offensive. I'm not going to try to deal with the nuke. All of my responses were defensive. This is just an offensive from Mike coming in to try to capitalise on what we saw, that he had relatively few defences topside. So Mike's come in with this tier 2 force, which is quite dangerous if it finds the commander, but unfortunately the gunships are going to take it out. And he turns it into a raid. No, he doesn't. My bad. I thought he was going to go up here and try to raid this, which is fairly pointless, but, like, tactical.
At this stage, yes. Although we have just seen that shot come off from the Tech 3 artillery.
Indeed.
Aiming for you as well.
Indeed. Like, he has fired a couple of shots at Mike's base at this point. Like, there's fresh husks here. That Tsar is still not ready, even though I've been pumping resources to Mike continually. So, there was a comment that Alex and Denki made after this, which is, Tech 3 artillery is better than nukes because you can't build a building to counter it. Shield generators don't count. It has a maximum range though, and this is apparently its maximum range, which is pretty fucking far, but at the same time it's not the unlimited range of a nuclear missile. He can't hit my resource farms, he can't hit my main base, he can't try to follow up on the nuke. Like, it just doesn't quite ring it.
That's very true. The only exception to that would be if you're playing with the UEF. Although it still has range, their experimental Maver has an insane range.
Indeed.
In fact, it could probably not shoot more of this map than it could shoot.
Yeah.
Because it has its minimum range.
Indeed. But, I mean, experimental units are all dumb, as we've seen in previous replays with Mike's Tsars.
Yes, quite.
And we'll probably see in future replays. So Alex is just testing his tier 3 artillery. He's hitting buildings he can see on map. Like, he knows they're there, so why not hit them? And if that's his maximum range, he can't really hit much else. You know, it's probably this circle here. You can hit Mike's base, but what's the point? Mike's not the threat. Except, right now, somehow, because I killed the commander, I get a bunch of points. But at the same time, I've got nearly double Mike's points, and I have basically nothing offensive.
And it's all coming down to Mike to build that experimental at this stage, and it's just look at the timing on that, just finished.
Yeah.
But it's the only major offensive unit that's got any investment into it. All of the production has been destroyed on both fronts. You have what you have left, and he's got how many factories do we think?
Well,
no, Mike. Probably one or two, if that.
He's not got the resources for
He's
it.
got 3.
Let me. So Mike's resources are plus 25 metal and plus 750 energy. That's not production capable.
No, it's not at all.
He does, however, have me. I've only got plus 64 metal, but I do have plus infinite energy, functionally. And with infinite energy, you can make infinite metal. So I'm set to come back. I can rebuild it. Alex knows he doesn't have too much time to sit on his hands to try to respond. Like, what he should have done when I got nuked, I think, is sent in these T3 gunships.
Yeah, I would agree. It would have been the perfect counter. It would have been quick across the map, and it would have picked off anything left. And your commander potentially would have been out of place.
Oh, he would have been. Yeah, he would have been. Well, there's a couple of tier 2 defences, but they're not going to stop those gunships in time. And also, he saw all of my air going up to kill Dinky. Like, he knew that I had nothing. Except,
Exactly.
What's this? The stragglers, who got missed out on the big box drag selection, and they're now coming down to support and cover Mike's Tsar. I want to admit that Mike and I were shouting at each other quite a lot, enthusiastically, excitedly, keenly, but slightly desperately, because we're both in not great positions. I have next to 0 production, it's recoverable, but it's not great. Mike has next to 0 production, it's recoverable, but not great. And Alex has basically been unattacked for a while now. We've killed Dinky, this is our time to act, and we need to do something.
Yeah, as it stands, he's the only one in an actual strong economic position currently.
Yeah, well, economic production balance. Like, he's got the economy, which I have, but he's also got the production capability, which I don't. And Mike's got the production capability, but without the economy behind it. So we have to rebuild before we can threaten Alex. And if Alex attacks either of us in that time, and we know he's got tier 3 gunships, then we could suffer greatly. Not that, he'd have to find my commander to be a threat, to be honest. Like, he could attack anywhere else where my commander isn't, and it wouldn't bother me too much. But Mike's commander is probably quite safe as well, in all honesty. Like, it's not a great position for Alex to get traction, I guess, looking at the... But Alex doesn't know that. And we don't know that. We don't know how much Alex has got, because... Oh wait, my Omni sensor's up. Let's see if we can verify any of this.
Yeah, it'll give you pretty decent range, but not quite far enough.
Yeah. So we can't see what he's got defensively. So this is desperate, and we are shouting at each other for stuff. And Mike's like, he was like, I'm going to build some air units. I'm like, I'll send mine down. He's like, great, because I can't produce air units while I move. And I'm like, you've got to move. We've got to do it now. And he's like, I know, I'm going. Can you help me? I'm like, maybe with, 20 planes?
With whatever's left, let's just get it all together and get this done.
Less than 20 airplanes. It's pretty pathetic considering where we've been. Like, all 4 players where we've been this game. This is pretty pathetic as an offensive. Like, yeah, the experimental aircraft carrier is good. I hear everybody crying out. But these will, like, the 5 of them? The 5? The 3? 3 of them. That's a bit more dicey. 4 of them? 4 of them? 4 of them with some other AA can actually probably take this out with these other planes streaming around to distract it. So Mike's trying to hide it there from Alex's viewpoint. So he knows there's an air unit here, but he doesn't know what it is. And we're desperately trying to cover it so he doesn't spot it.
Yeah, because as soon as he sees that, you know that all bets are off. He is going to hammer straight in for it.
Indeed. And then there's a lot of firepower coming out of it. Oh no, what is this? Like,
and it's that dreaded dot. As soon as you see that dot.
Yeah, flying as well. And now it's on his map, functionally forever. And he can see it coming into his base. He's got to respond. But there's not much to respond with. He responds with it. But, there's only so much you can do. And it comes in drips and drabs. There it is.
And the majority of his units are the gunships, which don't have that focus fire for air-to-air.
No, indeed. So our first target is this, so Mike can rebuild. And we don't know where his commander is, that's secondary right now. But then we see his commander there. And I'm like, forget the cannon, go for the commander. Mike does, he gets the right click, the cannon escapes. And there you can see, like, he doesn't get shot, guys. He doesn't get shot. We know what happened there, that was a Control K. Alex called it, they called GG in the chat, which we can't see on the replay. And yeah, he knew he was done because he wasn't going to kill the Tsar, and even if he did, it dropped on his head. So that is the climatic finish, the suitably climatic finish to quite a dramatic game.
Indeed, it was spectacularly played, and Alex is right. There's no point in continuing it at this stage of the game. He's against 2 players. He has an experimental over his head. Control K, call it quits, because you're not coming back from that. As soon as it starts firing, that thing can outrun any commander.
Yeah. indeed. So, yeah, there we go. We came to victory. MVP, I think, goes to Mike. Like, I might have got the takeout on Dinky, which enabled us to get the win, but I should have done it earlier. And Mike was, during the game, like we can see from the replay, that he was playing it very well. And during the game, he was being a great teammate, constantly asking advice, constantly doing whatever part of the plan I needed him to do. So, MVP to Mike there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Mike had just the right mentality to have that early pressure on, to keep that pressure on as well, and utilise those Tech 1 units to ferocious ability, because even at the later stages of the game, he managed to do some significant damage to some of Dinky's extraction points, and leave those units lying in wait, so they really did pay for themselves in the later game.
And at the end of the game, we can see that these 4 mass extraction points are still not taken, which at the very least is 8 mass at tier 1. But at tier 3, it's something like 36 mass a second. That's a lot of mass that Alex is missing out on. And this one here too, this 5th one, that's a lot. So those early raids have the ramification that those mass extractors aren't there, they can't be upgraded. He has to rebuild them, and if you keep killing them, they can never really gain their full potential.
And I think you can really see that in terms of if you as the viewers rewind back to an earlier stage in this, probably about the 30 to 40 minute mark, you'll probably notice that Alex had a reasonable force, but he wasn't able to bring that up to scratch as such, whereas Dinky had a lot more invested in buildings and was going for the nuclear tactic, going for that strategic missile, and was still producing units and trying to do drops. I think he had a lot more ability to shape his forces and change his plan, because he managed to keep hold of all those extraction points for most of the game, to be honest.
Indeed, and that's a combination of him building those early defences to stop early raids, and those early defences keeping me in a mindset of I can't raid, because if I tested them, I could have taken them out with my Air Force, but I didn't because I imagined that I couldn't. So it's not just the game you're playing, but the mind games behind it.
Indeed, because looking at it, it's one of the things that I think taking away from this map and this match in particular is something that I wish you did a little bit more of, and that's gone for just that extra poke at your opponent, just to really try it, go for that courageous rush in and just see if you can get over and do some economic damage at the back. Yes, you're going to take some losses, but I can also see how you get into that mindset, because at the same time as you've got this defensive force, if you send that in and you lose those units, you lose your defensive force, because your offense is your defense.
Yeah, except in this case it wasn't, because I could have sent in my gunships and my Tech 2 fighter bombers. I just didn't. And that's one of the things about Supreme Commander. It's not a zero-sum strategy game. So games like Age of Empires, Command & Conquer, the classical strategy games where resources are limited, dead units cost you double, because they cost the resources that you built, and also you lose those resources when you lose the unit. And so what you want to do is try to maintain your unit numbers as best you can, and that's the tactical element. Whereas in Supreme Commander, it's more about getting to your end game where you can kill a commander sooner than your opponent. And the losses you take along the way don't really matter, because you have infinite resources. These metal points never run out. The energy producers never run out. So you should always be trying to up your game, keep attacking, keep the pressure on. You don't care about the losses, so you have that advantage. It takes away from the tactical requirement to micromanage your raids. And I'm going to say, because I've been playing a lot of Age of Empires recently, that's partly why I didn't do that, because I was locked in that mentality of preserving my units for the critical mass. But I don't know if that's a good enough excuse or true. I think maybe I was just bad.
I wouldn't have said you were bad at all. I think everyone's actually really developed on their strategies. I particularly remember when first meeting Alex online for Supreme Commander, he was sort of very much more focused on his base and construction. But he's actually branched out in this one. He's gone in for some really serious raids and done some stunning damage. And I am a big fan of taking those transport ships just off the edge of the map in their routing. because that is such a clever thing to do, taking a unit completely out of your enemy's radar range, despite you're right in the corner and theoretically you should be able to see them.
Yeah, indeed. But it also shows, like, Mike and I both suffered significant losses. So Mike early on suffered this travesty, and then later on it got tier 3 artilleried, and it really set him back. But he didn't stop playing. He was like, how can I recover? How can I still affect the game? And I got nuked, and but my commander was alive. I was doing other things. My resource hubs are fine, so I can recover. I build strategic missile defenses, because if that's the in, I can stop it getting in. So even if you get set back, even if your opponents are effectively, and Alex as well, like, he was raided, let's not forget, constantly throughout the game. He lost these, these outer metal extraction points. He had his resources inhibited. He had to make choices based on those inhibited resources, but he still managed to keep going. So it's not about what you lose, it's about what you have left and what you can do with it.
Exactly, and also your resolve for pushing forward no matter the situation, because as this match truly shows, it can still make a massive impact on the end game.
Yeah, like, you could be throwing together the last desperate pieces of scrap metal that you have to build this giant flying saucer with a laser beam that can crash land on people, and it can pay off as a desperate plea for victory. So that was nice for Mike and I. It was a very fun game, and I'd like to thank Mike, Alex and Dave for playing it. Super enjoyable. And I'd like to thank you, Midge, for this commentary. I only hope it's recorded this time.
Yes, me too. And thank you very much for having me along. It's been most enjoyable doing this for a second time in a row. But I'm pretty sure that the commentaries remained somewhat unique, so I'm hoping that will entertain everyone somewhat.
Good, I'm sure it will. So thank you very much for joining me. I will definitely have you back. And to you, my loyal viewers, such as you are, good morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever time of day you're viewing this. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to giving you more to look at in the future.